Hello guys, and welcome to a new Steel Division video today by me, Vulcan. Today I have for you a 2 versus 2 on Bois de Limors, and in this one I'm going to be using the 101st Airborne deck. I'm playing with Val, who's going to be using the 3rd Armoured, and in this one I'm actually playing against Icy and Faust, who is the same person that I was playing the 2v2 ranks with. So this is sort of like an in-house 2v2, quite a competitive game because both sides are very proficient in the game. So I'm going to switch this to my point of view, and I'm probably going to keep it from my point of view for the majority of the game because I think it really sort of tells the story of the game quite well. So let's have a look at what sort of units I'm bringing in. So down here I've got a mix of airborne rifles, I've got airborne engineers, and then command infantry supported by 50 caliber machine guns and a couple of mortars. Then in the centre I've just got an AT gun to cover from here where this sort of smoke is. You can see where I sort of put a ping, but it hasn't showed up because I was in the neutral perspective. But yeah, just going to go here, cover the sight lines to the left side of the forest. Then Val's going to be using a mix of armoured rifles and the rifle leader and so on, with all these half tracks. He's also got an M4A1 at the start of the game to cover the left side. And he's covering basically all of this area, so he's got to cover quite a lot of space. And he doesn't necessarily have the availability to do it. But I'm pretty confident in Val for him to try and hold his ground whilst I push on through this forest and try and make ground against the 716th infantry deck, because that's what I'm most likely to be against. So we're playing against 716th and the Panzerlehr. So a pretty common sort of combination that I've been using, obviously, with Faust. So I'm well aware of the sort of units that we're going to be coming up against, and therefore I'm pretty confident that in the forest I can win. So I'm just going to be like piling into the forest as much as possible. There's not much 716th infantry player can do to stop me from getting through this forest, other than possibly like IG-18s well placed in some of like these hedgerows, maybe like in the side of these forests here, just look like across the open areas. Those will be the guns that would really stop me from moving through. Maybe like well-placed MGs would do the job, like again IG-18s over here firing down the road and into the open, like, or in the edge of this sort of tree line here, or just in that little patch there, because they have really good sight lines to stop infantry from running across the roads and all sorts of stuff like that. That's like really what you've got to be looking for. Say if you don't have infantry that like matches up to your opponents, the best way to deal with it is quite simply to just wait until they come at you and sit your fire support. For example, in here, look at that, like you had an IG-18 here, an IG-18 here, and maybe a machine gun in the middle, and that's just going to cover like all of these tree lines. Yes, of course they can mortar it and pin it down, but I would hope that you'd also have units elsewhere to cover them off. So that's really just the way you've got to do it. I've got an extra unit of, I think, airborne engineers and pathfinders for the right side. Pathfinder's going to be providing me recon where I need it, although honestly the reason I was mostly using pathfinders during this game was due to recon or due to just them having 2 stars, sorry, and the fact that they are great against infantry. Yeah, I've also got AD guns for the forest, mainly due to the fact that in general it's quite easy if you focus on, say, a forest, for example, for one person to bring a like armored car, and it just ruins your whole day. That's just something that can generally happen. So if I just show you guys where I'm putting my men, in the majority of cases, what I'm doing here is using the unloaded command position to bring them to the road, and then I'll manually move them through the forest. Because if you like unload at position, say in the middle of a forest, what they'll do is they'll unload at the closest side of the forest and then run through, which is good in some cases, but like here, it's going to be much quicker for them to just fast move all the way around the road rather than unload here and walk across, for example. So I'm just making sure that all of these orders are going to the right place and unloading as quick as possible to get that little bit of initiative early on. So we're running the +1. Val's made quite a spearhead here. He's got his armoured rifles unloaded with his armoured leader, and he's got his half-tracks there supported by an M4A1. He's got a couple of troops in the middle lining up, and he's got 3 units on this left side, going to be covered by my M3 gun. So we've spread out relatively well. I've got this M3 gun, that's pretty much just to cover this road, and I've got my mortar here, of course, to provide me with some mortar fire. Airborne engineers and pathfinders are basically going to attack move up the right side. And what I love about the auto cover system is that when you attack move through a forest, generally they will stay in like the most safe part of it. So here they're just going to move straight through. Here they're moving up again to this location. And there are certain positions where I feel like I'm safe to move. For example, here, the airborne engineers and airborne leader are safe to move to here because the front line's well over it. If there was infantry in this, then the front line would be further towards me. So that's pretty safe for me to move up there. I've got my 50 cals moving into position to cover the open here, as you can see. And then I've got the pathfinders leading an airborne engineer unit through the forest here. And yes, they cover the forest here with the front line, but if they have infantry in this side of things, then they're only going to get melted by the airborne engineers. I win that every time. So here what's happening is Val's infantry is getting hammered pretty hard. Some of the half-tracks are already dying. Fusiliers though going to be going for Val here. His armoured rifles moving up to engage those. Infantry is coming down the road, going to be engaged by both of my 50 cals. The Osttruppen there just about managing to get in cover before that actually happens. But yeah, here continuing to move up where I can. Managed to get to the edge of the forest here pretty much. I'm pretty aware that there's not much else left in there, and you can see the front line sort of forming around those 2 squads. Over here, I want to make the run into here. The only thing that's providing that is the 1 unit of infantry that I saw pop in there, so I'm pretty confident that I can try and push through here as well. My infantry movements are pretty slow, but in general I will make a lot of ground if I can kill the opposing infantry. So Fusilier squad not going to last too long against 2 armoured rifles, that's for sure. Another half-track going to be going down of Val's, and that Fusilier squad is getting chewed up. In the centre, Val's trying to push up with some armoured rifles against Panzer Grenadiers. That's not going to end too well. And over on this left side, he's actually got armoured rifles from return fire just to hold the front line forwards. So we're maintaining a +1 currently. I've actually made quite a lot of ground on this right side. If you look at the mini-map, you can see that on the right side in general, the map is very far pushed up. Got these engineers across the road, and that's probably the first obstacle that I actually managed to get across unhindered, because what generally happens is the roads are where you will engage opposing troops, because that's the easiest way to pin them down. So for example, on this right side, he's got a unit of Osttruppen here actually shooting me down the road, and I'm just going to continue to run my airborne rifles into cover whilst my airborne engineers move to the right to engage those. The airborne rifles here have found some Osttruppen. 12-man squad versus a 8-man squad with disheartened trait. The airborne rifles are going to win every time in that case, and with 11 HE power to use at their disposal, yeah, that's going to go really well. And I'm also moving over the airborne engineers to help out. So these airborne engineers, they can engage the Osttruppen if they get in range. I'm simply running straight towards them. I really want to get the rifles or the napalm on target. So he's actually moved back into the forest, and I'm chasing him down with airborne engineers. This is where you would want to hold with Osttruppen, because as soon as the airborne engineers try and cross the open, that's when they get pinned down, and you can actually kill them off in this case. But no, he's been forced to retreat anyway, and I'm going to keep the airborne leader as close as I can to maintain the 2 stars on the airborne engineers, since they are going to be the ones making the engagement. The Osttruppen just moved away from the airborne rifles here, and I'm bringing up another jeep here with a AT gun to kill off the B2 that I saw moving across the top side of the forest. But I'm already making dents here. Even these airborne engineers and pathfinders are still moving up through the right side, just using normal move orders at the moment, because I know that there's not going to be anything here because of the way the front line's moving. Over on this left side, devastation is occurring as Val's having to deal with multiple Panzer Grenadier squads pushing him pretty hard, and he's got his M4A1 and the M5A1 there to help him out. He's got plenty of half-track, so I feel like Val's alright at the moment on the left side, and I'm continuing up on the right. Airborne engineers cause the Osttruppen to surrender, and I make even more ground on this right side. Bringing up even more infantry and AT guns, just in case I get pushed by B2s, because I'm well aware that B2s are probably one of the equivalents of like an LG-18, for example, that can be extremely effective against this deck. So yeah, I'm just going to reinforce with some more airborne engineers, and then I'll maybe make the push to the left. I need to make the push across the open here, and I'm actually going to bump into some Osttruppen. So again, you can see here, this is where it comes in really handy. The Osttruppen can shoot across the road, and the airborne engineers can't get into range before getting pinned down. And that's something that even though they have like 1-star veterancy, they're still going to get pinned down very easily. So I have my mortar here, and the best way for me to deal with this road is quite simply smoke. If I can't get across the open without taking damage from the Osttruppen, then I'm always going to get pinned down. Whereas if I can smoke it and get close enough for my airborne engineers to use their napalm, then that'll work. And I've got a replacement airborne engineer here. I've also brought up an airborne leader just so that any pinned down units don't surrender. And currently, well, my airborne rifles are doing a reasonable good job against the Osttruppen anyway, but this MG34 is definitely an issue. I have this 50 cal able to get on target of the MG34, which is nice, but these Pathfinders now going to find themselves pinned down very quickly. Pathfinders over here are actually bumping into some Osttruppen, and I should have had the airborne leader further up to provide them with a 3-star veterancy, but just a little bit of a mistake on my part. Definitely should have been moving that up. But the MG34 does get taken out, combination of the Pathfinders and the machine gun there. I wasn't sure if it was actually this road or the next road. I think it might be in the next road that I actually ended up using smoke to get my units across, but either way, we managed to take out the MG34 and the Osttruppen. Airborne engineers just come and burn up the rest of the Osttruppen there, and quite simply, there's not too much that IC can do at the moment with his 716th, except from just continuously lose units to my infantry. I brought up a couple of AT guns on this left side, M3 guns here to help cover off against any small armoured advance, and I've also got this M3 gun moving up into cover as well to cover the road. So just providing a little bit of AT there. There is a little bit of a push going on here. It looks like IC actually ended up moving his troops over to the left side of the forest and started pushing pretty hard onto Val, and you can see that Val's front line here is collapsing slightly because of the overwhelming amount of troops. Meanwhile, on the right side, I'm pretty much getting a free forest here. So I'm going to continue to move up all my troops. This mortar actually hasn't seen much use at all because all of my infantry's been so far ahead, and the range of this is only like 800 meters, and I had it quite far back initially. So here we can see, this is what I'm talking about. Okay, so the Osttruppen with the Grenadier and the MG34s. I can't just quite simply make them surrender because there's a Grenadier there. So I need to be able to either pin them down or just let my airborne engineers get close. And my airborne engineers, once they are close, can do so much work. So what I'm going to do is actually provide initially HE support onto the MG. And then what I'm going to do is smoke it off and run across. So initial like HE support and then smoke it off. That's the idea there. Meanwhile, continuing to push up on the left side with the airborne leaders and the airborne engineers and rifles, continuing to make lots of ground up here. I just need to maintain this little gap here, make sure I don't get cut off, because that could definitely happen. Well, not that it would matter for my airborne units because they have wings, but in general, I just don't want my place to be cut off anyway because we lose lots of ground by doing that. Smoke's come in now, and what I'm going to do is try and move these airborne engineers onto the MG that has been pinned down. We've also got smoke just coming down on top of them as well. And as soon as they come into line of sight of any of the infantry, they can literally just burn them to death, and that's what I'm trying to go for there. So a couple of B2s in the middle, still causing issues. I brought up a M22 Locust to give us a hand, but here we go, MG34, napalm on target, and goodbye to the machine gun. Also on this right side of things, we got the Pathfinders moving with the airborne rifles. They can demolish the Grenadier and the Osttruppen as well. So it's pretty much up to Val's M8 and my M22 and then Val's M1 gun now to take care of these Panzer B2s. The trouble is with these Panzer B2s is they pretty much stun and kill things pretty quickly, especially considering they're 2-star veterancy. In this forest, that Osttroop are not going to survive against airborne engineers. Pretty much what I was doing here was using airborne rifles in tree lines, airborne engineers in forest patches, and that's basically what I was doing throughout the game. So I've got another Jeep coming up with a mortar, another mortar here. These Osttroop actually ended up getting behind enemy lines and nearly killed off my M3 gun, which was quite amusing. That really surprised me. But I'm just going to converge on them with the airborne leader, the airborne rifles, and the pathfinders here to engage them. The pathfinders with 3-star actually have 8 AP or 8 HE between them, so we're ripping that squad to shreds before it even can surrender. And I'm continuing to make ground through the forest. So this is where the 101st works out really well. They really specialise in like forest fighting, especially because it's like much easier to get within 100-meter range. And so the combination of engineers alongside like airborne rifles is just so strong, because the airborne rifles actually bring themselves a bazooka, so not even like armoured vehicles can really rush these guys down, and the 50 cals are pretty much just there to cover out in the open. So what I'm going to do now is, since we've reached phase B, is actually bring up the 356mm off-map artillery, because I feel like that's something that we can use to slow down the advance on the left side, since we can pretty much tell at this point that both IC and Faust are pushing on the left side. And I'm well aware that they're not called that in game, but that's the people who we are playing against. So yeah, they're going to be pushing now pretty hard on this left side. And what I've done in the forest is actually bring up an M22 command to provide command for my infantry squads, and also just pin down units like that MG there, because MG is not really going to be able to do much against a tank. Also got my mortar on target, which was helpful. And yeah, just spreading out, just continuing to spread as much as possible, pick off the rest of these units, and we're now running a +2 lead at 59% territory. I've got my airborne rifles here. These are pinned down. I probably should have put them on to return fire, if I'm honest, because then they wouldn't have fired at this Pack 37, and when these tanks try and cross the river on this bridge, I would have been able to ambush them. But either way, I've brought up some more AT guns now, some M1 guns, which are actually 2-star with the M22 Locust there supporting. HS129B1's going to come in and absolutely slam these tanks, the M4A1 and the M5A1. I'm going to be bringing in my Mustang to try and shoot that down. Unfortunately, just overshoot it, and then the Focke-Wulf 190 gets on target, and he's going to be coming around onto Mateo. So I'm just hoping that my Mustang is fast enough to get out of there alive before the Focke-Wulf 190 can shoot it down, but unfortunately not. So I was relying on the speed of the Mustang there to do the job, but it just didn't in the end. Bringing in this second Mustang to try and get onto the Focke-Wulf 190 that killed my Mustang, because I was literally just waiting for a second one there from my requisition points, but it ended up being just a little bit too late. So I'm just going to use that to quickly pin down this Pack 37 and hopefully try and take that out. Also getting the mortar on target there as well. And you can see I've spread out to like the edge of this forest in most cases. This AT gun's a little bit far back, but in general, if we look, it's just I've got my infantry just moving up to the edge of the forest where I can. Spotting a Fusilier squad here. I'm going to be able to bring them back into cover and move my airborne engineers up to deal with the Fusiliers. I also have my mortar here in the M22, and on this right side, just got my units to the edge of the forest at the moment, but I'm sort of bumping into a little bit of resistance here. I know there's a tank here as well, so I want to be able to get rid of that at some point. But meanwhile, just bringing up an M20 command. This is quite simply to buff my AT guns where I can. Shouldn't have let this MG34 engage my airborne engineers. I need to have this airborne engineer back further in the forest so that when infantry moves into it, they can get burned by the napalm. So I did start to move them back there, and then they got pinned down. Probably should have been falling them back, but it didn't really matter since they went back into cover. I've brought up a off-map artillery here. Now that's moving over to the left side to cover off the advance towards Val, since he's lost basically all his tanks now, and his left side is just completely collapsing. So I've managed to basically hold here my airborne engineers actually surrender to the MG34 squad, which should never happen. Just make sure you fall back your squads, guys, because I certainly forgot to in that case. Here we've got the airborne engineers being covered in the open by the Osttruppen, and well, the airborne rifles are actually going to pin down the Osttruppen. I'm just going to charge them down to try and make them surrender instead. So I've pretty much taken control of this right side forest. Having this much land has actually, just in general, given us the +2, and I'm continuing to move forwards squads again just to make more ground, since I'm well aware that there's not too much over on this right side. And I don't want all of these units here to be for nothing, so just got my AT guns on target here. They're trying to take care of the Panzer 39. I've actually got a M3 gun firing in the back of this tank, and I've got the mortar there taking out the pack. I'm bringing up some more units here. My Locust on the left side gets popped by a Panther. And yeah, these are two Pathfinder squads to just provide recon for my AT guns mainly, but also because they're there because they can actually engage units quite well. So I'm bringing my M20 command over to the left as well to provide 50 caliber fire support onto these infantry squads. My off map is ready to go, and it's preparing for its next barrage. It's a shame that it's not showing it on the map, but you'll see it come down soon enough, I'm sure. I've already used one strike back here, as you can see. Next one's coming in over here on top of the Panther, and if I jump to the neutral perspective quickly, you can see that that is actually killing quite a lot of units. MG34 infantry, quite a lot of infantry going down. But look at the concentration of the German forces on this left side. It's actually pretty insane. Val's Calliope going to be trying to go for the kill onto the MG34 and nearly kills it off. But the MG34 currently surviving on 1 health after multiple rockets come in from that Calliope. M20 command is engaging this half-track and trying to get the Pathfinder into range to use its gammon bombs. But yeah, we're moving into phase C very shortly with 2 minutes to go, and we've already got like a Befehl Panther and some Flak 88s rolling towards us, so this is pretty difficult for us to deal with. Meanwhile, on this right side, I've just got to take care of this Panzer 39. I believe at this point I could see it, so I know that is what's holding the line. Meanwhile, just got the rest of these units in the forest. Again, this AT gun should have probably been moving to the left at some point. And I believe I do eventually realise and move all of these units to the edge, because again, 50 cows would have been useful on the edge as well. But either way, I'm more concentrating on this left side, making sure that we don't collapse in the centre, because as long as we hold the forest on the right, then as long as we hold here and then push on the forest on the right, we will maintain this major territory lead. So if we just put it back to my point of view, we can see that I'm being pushed on by some Osttruppen here. We've got some Italian infantry trying to probe into the forest from the left side. And currently Val's still holding here with 1 armoured leader, but as soon as that dies, he's going to have a bit of problem. Now this is quite an amusing part of this battle. I brought in some off-map artillery, like here. And basically what Val does is he didn't see it coming. I assumed he would have, but he ended up fast moving all of his infantry and half-tracks directly into it. And if he had seen it coming, then he probably could have delayed his push and then got the units into these tree lines, or into the buildings there, and actually held for a little bit longer. But because he got hit by like one strike of that artillery, it basically made all of his units have to fall back, and that kind of just gave this little building area to the opponents, which was unfortunate to say the least. So the off-map backfiring just a little bit there. I've actually brought in, yeah, that one's just going to be going back to the edge of the map now, so that I don't give the points to the enemy. And I've got my AT guns here trying to deal with the half tracks, and I do manage to, so that worked out quite well. And in general, we've just lost complete control of the air now to the opponents, and generally this shouldn't happen, but it was just like unlucky because with those Mustangs, my first Mustang got shot down when it probably should have got out of there, and it probably should have killed the HS-129 as well, which was irritating. But just since they have Flak 88s now, any attempt of bringing in Air Force to shoot down opposing fighters has currently failed, and that's a big issue. So we're going to get hit here by some more napalm rockets and bombs and so on, which are going to pin down my AT gun and my 50 cal there that I'm using to try and hold back the opponents. On this right side, I'm just holding in this tree line. I've got some engineers here. I've got the 50 caliber machine gun. I've got some pathfinders with another AT gun in this tree line, and glider leader on the far left. I'm pretty much holding as best as I can. Val's really struggling at this point. He's got his jumbo, he's got his Calliope, and he's just got to keep those alive so that we can maintain this left side, because he doesn't have much on the map at the moment. But we're still counting up points. We're at 57% territory lead. I've managed to take care of this tank on the right side by sneaking an airborne rifles next to it and killing it with the bazooka. And we're on 1,842 points. So we're really sort of going for this conquest victory. Doesn't really matter if we lose this whole left side, as long as we can control the right side, we should be okay. So yeah, I've done a reasonably good job on that right side of holding there. And airborne engineers, or airborne 50 cal now, going to get pinned down by all of these tanks and an enemy MG42. His jumbo, the Val's jumbo, is going to be trying to engage the Befehl Panther and taking that out. But at that range, Befehl Panther's going to get the kill. And I'm bringing up another off map to try and slow down this advance. So that machine gun now getting hit by a SPW-233. I'm trying to run away with my glider leader here to maintain the veterancy onto the Pathfinder and the AT guns. But artillery is now coming in and doing quite a lot of damage to my units, but I'm just trying to maintain the ground. Going to bring in another off-map artillery again, just to provide as much cover for our troops as possible as we retreat, and try and slow down the enemy and maintain our +1 lead. And basically, as you can see, the map's just completely skewed. All of these units, I eventually moved to the left side. You'll see it all happen in one go at some point, but basically I've spread out as much as I can on the far right, assuming that there wasn't too much here. I'm going to continue to move forwards my airborne engineers there. My M1 gun does get pinned down and destroyed by these Panzer Grenadiers. Actually bringing in the P51 Mustang there to try and stop these Panzer Grenadiers, but what's going to happen is my P51's actually going to get caught out. Myself and Val coordinate our Mustangs to come and attack these ME-109s, and Val's got onto the back of the Focke-Wulf 190 there. As long as we can try and shoot down one of these planes, we should be okay. So he's got on target for a long time there. One of the Focke-Wulfs goes down. I'm trying to get onto these ME-109s as well, but these Flak 88s really turn the tide of this engagement. And as you can see, another ME-109 is going to be coming in, and both of my Mustangs are forced to fall back. This ME-109's onto another one of my P-51 bombers, and that's going to go down as well. So that was pretty bad engagement for us again, mainly due to the Flak 88s. Mustang going to be going down there with Val's as well, and he's just going to be trying to engage with these ME-109s, but he's 2 versus 1 since he told his other Mustang to get out of there. That's just a continued air engagement. The Mustang's trying to outturn the ME-109s, and is currently doing so quite well. I've been hit here again by more artillery. Pathfinders and engineers trying to hold against the MG34. Should have been falling those chaps back. Still maintain this right side, and as long as they don't cut us off down here, then we should maintain the territory lead for the majority of the game. Off-map artillery is coming in here, and you can see that I am hitting them pretty hard. This is the larger artillery, the 356mm artillery on here, and then I've got the 203mm artillery actually hitting all of these chaps and blowing up the infantry that was stuck in the edge of this tree line. So again, just holding them back as long as we can, but they are now reinforcing down the road with more Werftflammens and Italian infantry, just pushing so hard towards our spawn. I've managed to get up towards their spawn on the far right side, and now I'm actually moving all of these units from right to left, because obviously there's no point in having units on this far right side if I'm not going to have any reinforcements come down here and attack me. So finally moving all of these units to assist me on the left side of the forest, just maintain that defensive line. As soon as I move out of the forest here, these airborne engineers aren't going to have a fun time, so that's why I'm not trying to move any further currently. And if I actually jump this to the neutral perspective, you can see that he is covering this off with infantry. So I see he's got some Italian infantry here covering off. We've got Faust with an MG42 squad. He's got a half track and another Italian infantry up here from IC. So if anything does come pushing towards them, he can just reinforce from here and push back against us, which is why I'm not going to be pushing too hard on that right side anymore. We just got to maintain the left. Got an M10 destroyer coming up to help out. Off-map artillery coming in again, trying to do as much damage as I can. 250 cals are going to be able to hold things back as well, and you can see the front line adjusting as more units get pinned. I'm actually hiding this off-map just behind these buildings, and if they weren't hidden they would probably get destroyed, but that's okay. I'm managing to get off all of my strikes where I need to, and they're continuously doing damage to this ongoing advance of German forces. The concentration on this left side was so high, and the majority of my forces are over here on the right. So I'm basically trying my luck now. I am actually going to push out a few units, trying to make as much ground as possible. These guys moving to the edge of the tree line there, these guys are going to get pinned down. But they're engaging with these Italian infantry. The main issue with this is, and you'll see what happens, is they're going to get pinned down and then they're going to fall back towards the enemy, because they'll fall back towards where the spawn should be, and then get basically auto-surrendered when they run into enemy units. Another Mustang going to go down there of Val's. We both brought in ours, the one I had left and the one Val had left, to take on the HS-129, but they also brought in all the ME-109s that we didn't see come with them. And what ended up happening was I basically just got rid of mine really quickly, like got it out of there, and Val's was the sacrifice. And here again, P-51 Mustang is going to get caught out by the ME-109s, and both of those hit and shot down. Actually, one of them managed to get out alive, but either way, we're still losing the air war, and that's not great, because these HS-129s are really going to do a lot of damage against, for example, Jumbos and our other tanks. So yeah, I managed to make these guys fall back, but as you can see, they're running directly into machine gun fire and the Panzer V2 there, which is pretty silly. I believe they do need to fix this, but either way, yeah, it's not going to end well for those airborne engineers, let's just put it that way. So 50 cals trying to take out some of these fire support weapons, the PaK-40 and the MG42, but I'm going to lose that 50 cal there. More off-map artillery coming in onto the opponents. And now what's happening, since I made a little bit of a push on the right side, they are actually responding to this threat. I've got my M22 going for many shots onto these half tracks. I've brought up these engineers into the orchard there, and I'm also moving up to the top side near these tree lines. Going to be moving the airborne leader up there. I've also got the airborne rifles here, just covering the reinforcement point from up there. I'm just trying to do as much damage as I can with this locust, while the rest of my units move over to the left side. And you can see the majority of my units are starting to concentrate on the edge of the forest, since they are going to be pushing back towards me. But down here, what's happening is we're losing so much ground. My off-map artillery pieces can stop this line from pushing all the way back to our spawn, but in general we're not in a great place. Off-map, well, not off-map, rocket artillery coming in and hitting Val's infantry quite hard. My M10 destroyers just holding as best they can currently, and trying to take out units. What ends up happening here is the M22 actually gets ambushed by the Italian infantry, and I lose that, unfortunately. And my airborne rifles in the orchard there do get taken out. So, got a Panzer V2 pushing towards my 50 cal as it arrives on the left side. Just going to smoke that off to allow my 50 cal to get out of there. Mustangs still coming in to try and shoot down the ME-109s, but again, Flak 88s, there's too many of them now, and they're going to constantly cause our units to fall back. There's this one and this one. As soon as we come out of the air spawn, at least one of our planes is going to be forced to fall back, and then the second one gets hit by the second shot, and so on and so forth. So over on this left side, yeah, not going too well. The M8 Greyhound has finally been forced to fall back, and that's lost us even more ground here, and we're actually back to a 50-50. And as you can see, it's literally turned sideways. The whole map is sideways. How insane is that? You don't see this very often. So I've actually brought in an M4 Double D to help out as well, although that's not going to do too much. I'm just relying solely on these M10s on the left side to hold the ground, and as long as we can hold it 50-50, we can draw this out till the end of the game. There is 8 minutes time remaining, so they've got to get like, what, a +3, +4 to win the game. So they literally just got to break us entirely. And you can see here, just moving forwards the M4 to try and hold, moving the M10s to hold on the left. And as long as we can hold this line, we can maintain the 50-50. But what's happening up here is my units are actually creating a little bit of a gap. Since this airborne engineer died, what ended up happening was like half-tracks and infantry started just moving through and breaking through my lines. So it actually created a massive bubble and cut off all of these airborne rifles and engineers. So I'm kind of, I don't know, I kind of screwed myself by actually moving all of these units from behind enemy lines, or from behind my lines, to the front line. Down here, what ended up happening was a Panther that actually got ambushed, I believe, by an M3 gun in the side armor, which was quite amusing, since that M3 gun has 8 AP power, so that was a pretty low chance of penetration to begin with, but it managed to pop the Befelled Panther in side armor, which was nice. M10s doing their job here, pinning down those pioneers. ME-109s coming in to deal with my Mustang. What I'm doing is trying to draw them over the Bofors here, so that I can then engage them, but Mustang just going to get pinned down immediately by the Flak 88. So yeah, I brought in all these Bofors to try and win back the air war. But what ended up happening was obviously the Flak 88 stopping my planes from doing too much damage. Now here, this is the fun part. Airborne engineers flaming everything that comes down the road, and I'm trying to make them all surrender. So they're falling back there, they're going to surrender. The airborne engineer is going to continue down towards these pioneers. But unfortunately what happens here is actually my airborne engineers end up surrendering, but I made so much stuff like surrender on the road here to the flames. It was a shame that the opposing pioneers managed to make my airborne engineers surrender, because pioneers do have those HE grenades. But now I'm sort of being squeezed pretty hard. This half-track's just pushing all over the place. M3 gun does manage to pop it, which was nice. I'm now being engaged up here by an MG42, and the airborne leader now there being engaged by that and the half-track. Infantry is trying to push in from the left to the right. I've obviously lost my airborne engineers that were covering this earlier by being greedy and trying to push out. So yeah, I'm actually in a pretty dire spot on the right side. It wasn't going particularly well for me, and now a +1 in the opponent's favour. But here we go. Mustangs coming in from Val to try and take on the ME-109s. My Bofors trying to do their best to shoot down these planes. Going to come in with a Mustang to try and finish off that HS-129, and I do manage to kill it off. Second HS-129 also going to get hit pretty hard by the Bofors. I'm hoping that the Bofors can cover off that Mustang, but just don't get on it in time. And well, here continues the forest fighting. So I've got another airborne engineer here. He managed to get up and cover this off. 50 cal is destroying those Italian infantry. My Pathfinders just get taken out and forced to surrender before they make the MG surrender, so that was annoying. But in general, at the moment, it's all about ground and holding the ground. I'm currently got this little bubble. If we can get rid of this bubble, it takes them away from a +2, and that's all we really need to do, because like we said earlier, all they need to do is get like a +3 and a +4 to win, and they've only got 5 minutes to get over 2,379 points. So I'm not even sure if they could win at this point, but either way, just trying to maintain the ground where we can. Val's actually brought in an M8 Greyhound, and this was a really good choice of unit to get rid of some of these pesky half-tracks that were just pushing our front line in all over the place. It's also got the M3 half-track here. They're going to be bringing up some armoured rifles. They can hopefully deal with the Panzer V2 with its bazooka. My mortar here probably should have been firing at something, but I'm not sure if I entirely had any targets at this point. And I can't really see what's coming. And literally the best thing for me to do with this mortar is literally use it to hold the front line. Either way, engineers here going to be engaging Panzer V2 with the HE grenade. And, well, that's not really going to end well for the engineers there, and they are going to surrender. But Val's got the ambush going. The Greyhound is going to wait. B2 is going to show itself and pop in the rear armour as the B2 goes past. So that really nice there. Val using the M8 to ambush the B2 in the forest. I'm bringing up a load of extra stuff now. I've actually brought up my own M8s and the M4s for the forest. I brought up a bunch of infantry, and yes, I had been floating a lot of points at this point because I got a bit complacent. I was holding on the left side. I was trying to concentrate on this, and then I was also trying to concentrate on the movement of my forces on the right side. So I kind of lost track of my requisition points. But either way, got the reinforcements coming in here to just hold things back. Again, as long as we can hold it at a +1, that's all we need to do. And I'm maintaining this airborne rifles up here because that's actually a reinforcement point, as you can see. So I don't want that to basically go back into the opponent's hands. So those airborne rifles need to stay there. Airborne leader probably should have been moving down with my airborne rifles here. These airborne engineers literally just staying up there again to gain us more ground. Another half-track showing itself. I'm going to be moving forwards my M8s to go hunt those down because I know that he has basically half-tracks just driving around and causing me issues in the front line. So there we go, M8's going to be sitting there and trying to take out those half-tracks. Got HS-129 coming into the right side. Pathfinders are going to be taken out there, and these airborne engineers also going to be taken out as they were attempting to chase down an enemy unit but ended up running out into the open again, which was a bit silly. But either way, continuing with the Bofors on this left side is actually providing us with really nice AA. And I've brought up my second M8 to help out with these half-tracks. Val's bringing down his as well. Brought up the glider leader here with the 50 cal truck and some engineers, and I'm also moving up some more 50 cals. So we're sort of recovering this relatively well, and we're also making back some ground on the sort of left side here. So bringing it back almost to 50-50 when it was very dire for a certain amount of time. And now we're really starting to win the air war back. Thanks to my Bofors, we really had some good AA cover. And my Thunderbolt here, this is a rocket Thunderbolt, is going to get onto the back of the HS-129 and shoot that down. So we don't have to worry about that anymore. And these M10s are both still alive here. These guys were doing work. They're not only with their main gun, but just with their 50 cals as well. And Val's going to be taking out a Flak 88 there with one of the Thunderbolts, and we're just clearing these guys out now. So airborne leader's going to be bumping into some Speertrupp, and we're continuing to move forwards with the M8, just cleaning up the rest of these half-tracks and stuff. There is a couple of Italian infantry approaching my airborne rifles there, so that's going to be an engagement that occurs. The Italian infantry actually has significantly less HE at that range, so my airborne rifles can actually do a reasonably good job there. Down here my glider rifle don't really match up to Pioneers, especially 2-star Pioneers, but what I'm hoping here is that I can pin down these squads as they come in the open. So I've got my 50 cals ready, and I've got a couple of my M8s here now going to engage the Panzer V2. Panzer V2 is going to engage my M8, but I've got an M4 coming up on the right side as well. Engine destroyed of that Panzer V2. M3 gun's actually got a side shot there. Gonna get this M8 out of line of sight of the B2 because I don't want that to be destroyed, but the M3 gun, well, that's gonna go down to the howitzer. And well, since it gets to the end of the game, the time runs out and we win the game. So after the whole 40 minutes, the game comes to an end, and well, there wasn't enough time for Faust and IC to make back the ground to win the game. And honestly, at the end there, we were starting to make back the ground ourselves anyway. So if we jump to the team's perspective, you can see it was actually pretty close in terms of kills and losses overall. But myself with 3,850 kills to 2,645 losses there really pushed us through that forest very well. in the later phases, in phase C, you can see that Faust did manage to get just about a positive KD by a solid 17 points. And yeah, Val really struggling on the left side throughout the mid game, really. In the early game, held really well, but just got crushed by the double teaming on the left side once I was fully concentrated on the forest and he ended up playing against 2 players. It's very easy to collapse against that because you don't expect the amount of forces coming your way, and that's why he had such a hard time. By the way, if we look at the kills and losses, I'm looking at this from IC's point of view with the 716th. So in general, he's going to have a pretty mixed kill list because he came up against both of our forces throughout the game. But this Panzer V2, that's done quite a lot of work there. MG34 definitely getting a lot of kills. Again, a Panzer V2 getting its fair share of kills, even killing a Calliope as it went further up. These Flak 88s, though, not really killing too much. Pack 43 picking off a Jumbo, classic Jumbo killer there. But if we look at the losses, well, it mainly comes down to my engineers burning his squads alive. We've got a few kills coming in here from tanks. Naval Battery killed off a Flak 88, an IG-18 and an MG-34, and that pretty much paid itself off. This Naval Battery again getting another Flak 88, MG-34 and so on, again paying itself off. And yeah, in general, we did relatively well with our kills, which allowed us to hold the ground as they got closer to our spawn. But that's about it. I'm probably just going to leave it there. It was a very long game, and there was a lot to talk about throughout that game. But hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.